Good afternoon, everybody. It's Sharon Spurlock, and we're so happy to have you here with us today for our weekly Q&A with the family support team at the St. Louis ARC. And if you are on our regular mailing list, which I hope you are, you probably recognize the name Governor's Council on Disability because we share lots of information about them. Today, we are honored to have Claudia Browner with us, who is the executive director of the council, and she's going to be able to tell us a lot about what all the things are that the Governor's Council does to promote and support people with disabilities in the state of Missouri. So without further ado, I want to introduce Claudia and thank her for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for inviting me to be a part of this session. Like you mentioned, my name is Claudia Browner, and I'm the director of the Governor's Council on Disability. I'm located in Jefferson City, Missouri. We are a state agency, and I will talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. I have been with the Governor's Council since 2005 and have been serving as the director since 2018, so about 5 years, a little bit more. I'm excited to be here and ready to share a little bit of information about what our office does, who we are, and how we can maybe serve you.
Fantastic. Well, let's get this show on the road. We did schedule a little extra time today because there's so much information to share. So hang with us and we're going to get started with this presentation.
That's right. So I will give you a quick overview of the Governor's Council on Disability and talk to you a little bit about the history and the structure and the mission of our agency, and then go into a little bit more detail about the programs and initiatives that we work on. So the Governor's Council on Disability was actually established as a committee in 1949, following suit of a national committee that was formed after World War II, which was entitled, and forgive me with the language, but that was the term that was used back then. It was founded as the Governor's Committee on the Employment of the Handicapped, and that fortunately was changed in 1994 when we were renamed to the Governor's Council on Disability. We have been a state agency since 1977, so a long time, initially under the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, and since 2004, we are an assigned division under the Office of Administration. And our main mission is to provide leadership and support so that people with disabilities can achieve inclusion and independence. Our council is overseen by 20 council members and a council chair, representing Missouri's 8 congressional districts, plus 12 members at large. We currently actually have 5 vacancies on the council, so we're not fully appointed, but we have 15 council members and a council chair. And like I said, the members are representing the entire state of Missouri. And we have the majority of our council members represent the disability community, either by having a disability themselves or a family member or close relative with a disability. And the governor appoints our council members, as well as the council chair. And the council chair appointment requires Senate confirmation. We have a small staff, myself and 3 team members, so we're a staff of 4. And I'd like to say we're small but mighty. We do a lot of things and hopefully do a lot of good for the disability community. And most of that also through collaborations with other agencies and stakeholders, as well as representing the disability community on various boards and committees and initiatives. One thing I'd like to mention is if you are interested in serving on the council, or if somebody's out there thinking that might be a good fit for me, I'd like to apply. Council members, as I mentioned, are appointed by the governor, so you would need to apply at boards.mo.gov. And there is an online application for any board or commission under the state of Missouri that individuals can then research and apply for. So the role of the Governor's Council is to serve people with disabilities through promoting full inclusion in all aspects of community living. And that includes, daily living, that includes employment, transportation, housing, etc. So education, all those main components that are a part of everyday life. And we advise state agencies and other non-governmental entities on policies and practices that impact individuals with disabilities. And we encourage system changes that eliminate barriers and support the well-being and independence of individuals with disabilities. Some of our main functions are to maintain the disability web portal, and the website is referenced on the slide. It's disability.mo.gov. And that website also houses a resource directory, which is a community resource directory for the state of Missouri that can be searched by name, by type of disability, by services provided, by region, by city. So there are different ways to search it. And if there are community service provider out there that would like to be listed in that, there's a page on that resource directory page where they can add themselves to the directory to add their information. And otherwise, if people, there are on our website multiple categories in addition to that resource directory, topics related to disability issues that people can search and find information and links to. Some of the ones I'm going to name are aging and disability information, assistive technology, health and wellness, transportation, service animals. The list goes on and on. So you can find a lot of information on our website, but we are also here by phone or email. You can reach us to find information or resources or referrals, technical assistance on disability related issues. And then we provide educational presentations and training on different disability related topics. And we have some programs such as legislative, youth transition, awards programs, awareness programs, and outreach activities. And I will discuss each of those in a little bit more detail.
Thank you. Before we leave this page, I'm so interested in the makeup of the council. And you said that it's people, a lot of the majority of the people represent either people with disabilities or with connections to disabilities.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask if you knew if there were individuals that identified as having an intellectual or developmental disability that sit on the board. Sometimes I went to an event the other day and there was people that represented more physical disabilities, but there wasn't anyone there that kind of represented the folks that we typically work with.
So the answer to that is yes. We have a broad representation on our council, and like I mentioned, the majority of our council members either have a disability themselves, and those vary. There are different types of disabilities represented, and others have sons, daughters, or family members that represent that disability community.
Fantastic. So as far as the expectations for somebody that would be appointed to that role, what would their expectations be in terms of time commitment? What sorts of projects are they engaged in? I loved hearing about this sort of thing.
Sure. We meet quarterly, so attendance at the quarterly meetings would be required. And then we have some subcommittees on the council. We have different types of committees that council members are expected to join and work on, and those typically meet by WebEx. So time commitment is not super huge, but again, we want active council members that are engaged in our work and, interested in our work and support what we do. So we have several legislative programs. One of them that will be coming up here really soon is the Legislative Priorities Poll. And that is a survey that we send out far and wide throughout the state of Missouri each fall to find out from the disability community which legislative topics and issues are important to them in the upcoming session. And then those poll results are compiled in a report that is then shared with the General Assembly and elected officials to guide their work in the upcoming session. And it is also posted on our website for people to refer to, or those who participated in the survey to see the results. The other one is legislative education project. And that is twofold. We have information on our website on a page titled Legislative Education Project that has different short videos and training modules that educate people on how the legislative process in Missouri works, how to build a successful relationship with a legislator, and how to provide testimony on behalf of or against a piece of legislation, and all those kind of things that are important in becoming involved in the legislative process in Missouri and becoming an advocate. And the other component of that is webinars that we offer during the legislative session that dive in a little bit deeper into what I just mentioned, explains how to become engaged in that process and how to become, make a difference for the disability community by advocating or by testifying against or on behalf of a certain piece of legislation, and then discussing any specific bills that have been filed that affect the disability community. And that's also where the legislative update ties in. That is a weekly publication that we offer throughout the session that summarizes any piece of legislation that has been filed that would affect the disability community should it be passed into law.
I don't know what it is about legislative advocacy, but people seem to feel very overwhelmed and anxious with the idea of communicating with this legislature. So I think having these resources are so important. So if you're out there listening, take a few minutes and go and check out these short webinars. I bet you it's going to seem so much easier once you take a minute and see how simple the process can be. I do want to ask about legislative updates. We're in the recess right now, but we'll be getting back into legislative action and advocacy coming up soon. It was a pretty active legislative session for the disability community last year. Are there things that you thought were real successes or real frustrations from last year? And are there things you're anticipating for the coming session?
What most people probably heard about is the passage of a couple of pieces of legislation that are relevant to the disability community, and those are the Ticket to Work legislation and then also the Employment First legislation. Those are probably the ones that were the most discussed throughout the session and were considered the biggest changes for the disability community. As far as priorities for next year or what I anticipate, it's hard to say at this point because we don't have the poll results. Those will be available probably around November when all the surveys have been evaluated and the report is done. And I have to stress that the Governor's Council on Disability is a non-partisan or bipartisan agency, so we don't guide advocacy or we don't tell people you should advocate for or against this bill. We just provide the disability community with the tools and the knowledge they need to have to do that for themselves. Everybody can decide for themselves what they want to pass or what they feel is important, and then go communicate that with their legislators. So that is what we see as our role.
Perfect. That's a great clarification. And I do agree with you. Ticket to Work and Employment First are things that we're very anxious to learn more about. Just last week, I was working with someone and I believe they're going to be able to potentially get more access to benefits. They lost access to benefits when they got married. And so they're being able to kind of revisit that, which is really exciting. Keep your eyes open. For those of you that come to these regularly, we've got some experts that are going to be joining us in October for National Disability Employment Awareness Month to talk about the impact of the new legislation. So that's coming right around the corner.
So we have a couple of youth programs. Our longest standing one is the Missouri Youth Leadership Forum, and that is a fantastic program for high school students with disabilities between the ages of 16 and 21. And the program is open to those high school students from any area of the state with any type of disability. So we don't focus on any particular disability. It is all encompassing, and the supports that the students need to participate are provided by us during that conference. It's a week-long conference. We just held it, and it was really exciting. Again, we held our 19th annual Missouri Youth Leadership Forum in July from the 18th to the 22nd. And we had the highest turnout yet. We had 32 students attend, which was fantastic. And they came from all over Missouri, rural as well as urban areas. So we had a good cross-representation of the state as well as cross-representation of different disabilities. And the students got to experience a whole week of a college experience. We hold that conference at MU campus in Columbia, University of Missouri. The students get to stay, as well as the staff and the volunteers, get to stay in the dorms for the whole week. And we have different learning opportunities throughout the day, and then some fun and educational activities in the evening. We have mentors. We learn about employment and career exploration. We have a keynote speaker, an adaptive sports night. We do a whole day. You see the picture on the slide is our group in front of the Capitol. We travel to the Capitol in Jefferson City for one day and have a mock legislative day. And we had 4 House representatives and 1 senator join us this year to discuss a piece of legislation on the House floor and the Senate chamber. The participants got to sit in the chairs where the legislators normally sit and discuss this bill. So it is a really cool experience. And we had Governor Parson join us over in the Truman Building, where we prepare for this legislative event at the Capitol. And he shared his vision of what a good leader is and gave some valuable advice to the participants. So that was really great too. And the other components of the program are learning about disability history, which is important. We always celebrate the anniversary of the ADA in July on the 26th. So our conference is always very close to that time frame. So that gives us an opportunity to share some information about that. And these days, all the delegates that come to our conference were born after the passage. So they don't really know what it was like before the ADA was passed. So giving them some history on that's not always taught in schools, unfortunately, is important. You know, it's important to show where the disability community has come from and where they might still be going. So, and then we also teach them about self-determination and whether you should disclose that you have a disability or how you do that with an employer and how to ask for an accommodation and all those different things. So it's a great learning opportunity. And we have alumni from this program then come back in the following years to serve as staff members. So that is also a great ongoing leadership opportunity for those who have graduated from the program to come back and enhance their leadership skills. And we had 10 alumni join us this year that led our small groups. So that was awesome.
That is super cool.
Yeah, the other program that's on this slide is the Virtual Leadership Summit, and that is something that we started during the pandemic. So we did it for 3 years now, and we'll see where that goes in the future. But it basically was just a snapshot of the Youth Leadership Forum in a virtual format and just for one day, just for a few hours. So it was a very condensed version of the information that we share during the week-long conference, but it was also a good opportunity for students, same age group, 16 to 21 from around the state to participate and get at least somewhat of a leadership training opportunity during the pandemic and a little bit beyond. We had it this spring as well, so.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, I don't think I know anybody that's gone to the Youth Leadership Forum that hasn't come back just bubbling over with energy and purpose, ready to kind of take action for themselves. I think it's such a key time in life to be able to know how to speak about yourself, how to speak about your disability, how to advocate for what you want. And what's the cost for that again?
So the students attend for free. They have to just get transportation to and from Columbia to attend, but the conference is funded through private and sponsorship and donations and agency sponsorships and donations. So it is not operated from state funds. And we are able to provide this great experience free of charge to the students, which is another great benefit to the parents and the students. Thank you for bringing that up. I always forget to mention that, but that is a
Free
very
is
important.
really an important element for us. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think we'll notify you when those applications become open. And, if you need support, come and talk to us. Sometimes there's conflict with a summer work experience program or other kind of thing, but this is such a great opportunity. And particularly if you're going to be going into a college environment or living independently, you get a little taste of that. So there are folks here at the ARC and at other organizations around town to help you navigate around any conflicts that you might have so you can enjoy an opportunity like this.
This is a long-standing program of our agency, the Inclusion Award. This will be our 32nd year we're doing the Inclusion Award this year. Each year in the fall, we open up nominations for the Inclusion and the Youth Leadership Award. Youth Leadership Award is a little bit newer. This will be our 11th year where we accept nominations. And basically what we're looking for is any organization for the Inclusion Award is any organization, individual, or agency that shows best practices in the inclusion of people with disabilities. And that is a broad spectrum for anywhere from employment, universal design. We've had teachers win this award before for their work in the classroom and in their schools. We've had winners that designed a universal playground. I mean, the list goes on and on. When it's not really very limited. It's a broad spectrum of community inclusion that will be considered. And what we're looking for is nominations to highlight those who do great work in that area. And then the Youth Leadership Award recognizes a young person from the disability community between the ages of 16 to 26 who does great things in their communities to improve the lives of people living with disabilities. And that could be advocacy work, that could be typically it's some work related to advocacy maybe at their college, in their high schools, or in their communities, where they bring people together or make lives better for those living with disabilities.
Do you get a lot of nominations for those awards?
We do, and our council members and our state liaisons that come to our quarterly meetings, representatives from the different state departments that attend our meetings regularly, they volunteer to judge those award nominations, and typically they have a pretty hard time determining a winner because there are very good ones every year. That
good. It should be a tough competition. We've got a lot going on in Missouri right now. Exactly. A lot of good things.
Yes. So the awards, outreach, and educational activities. As you mentioned earlier, October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And one of the activities we engage in during that month is having a poster contest. So that is open right now for participation. We are looking for artwork, paintings, drawings, sketches. It could be digital art. And the winning piece of artwork will be featured on our annual poster recognizing Disability Employment Awareness Month. And that poster then gets distributed out throughout the state during the month of October. And it's shared on our social media channels, on our website, in the annual report. So whoever wins gets a lot of recognition for their artwork. And the theme this year is advancing access and equity. And it's addressing how equal opportunities to access employment and to succeed in employment is important for people with disabilities. So the poster can center around that, or also around inclusion, community, and employment in general. So that's kind of what we're looking for. What you see there on this little graphic that's on the slide is actually in the circle there. That is a snippet of the artwork that won in 2021. I had to look. I have the poster hanging in my room.
I'm sorry, I
Um,
just have to mention that that was one of the St. Louis Arc self-advocates who submitted and drew that amazing piece of art. So you guys, this could be you. You've got until September 15th. Think about employment and advancing access and equity. Submit a poster. It's so exciting to see this work still coming up 2 years later.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope we get a lot of good entries. So send them our way. The information is on our website. You need to complete a form to send with the poster so we know who the artist is and a little bit about the artist. And it's open to any Missouri resident with or without a disability. So anybody can participate. And we also have a virtual National Disability Employment Awareness Month exhibit, which is a website dedicated entirely to that month and provides a lot of resources and information about employment of people with disabilities and so forth. So I invite you to check that out. And then we also provide educational presentations and trainings on disability awareness, on employment, service animals, and other related topics.
And are those pre-prepared presentations that are available digitally, or will you work with an organization to collaborate on a presentation?
So we work with those who request those, and we can customize those. We have a couple that are pre-done that are being shown to new state employees. For instance, we created some information about disability awareness in conjunction with the Missouri as a Model Employer initiative. So those are always available on the learning platform for people to view. And then we have a couple, or we have others that we customized based on the request from whoever needs them. And then last but not least, we have some publications that I wanted to share with you. One of them is an accessible parking video. It's basically a public service announcement highlighting the importance of keeping accessible parking spaces and the access aisles available for those who need them and what happens if you don't. And it's kind of a fun little video. It's kind of a humorous approach to it, but I think it gets the point across that parking is for those who need it. And then we have an accessibility guide, and that is a newer publication that was issued the end of last year. It was initially developed with the Office of Administration's Diversity and Inclusion Council and then modified for public use. The one initially developed was more for the state workforce with an accompanying learning path to teach people how to make meetings and events and communications accessible for all of us. And then out of that, we developed one for the public use, and that is housed on our website as well. People can download it, have it as a reference at their desktop, and there's also a learning path where you can take some webinars to learn how to make PowerPoints and events and websites and social media and all those things accessible for everybody. And then we have a capital access guide, and we have developed that in collaboration with the Missouri Assistive Technology Council. It is also housed on our website, and it provides information about the accessibility and accommodations that are available at the Capitol building. We have a newsletter that goes out every other month. We just sent the August one out a couple days ago. Hopefully you had a chance to see that. And then we have service animal booklets and flyers. There was a legislation passed a few years ago, and that out of that came a couple of new flyers. One addresses assistance animals in housing, and the other one talks about how only service animals are allowed in places of public accommodation, and shop owners can print that out and put it on their shop windows if they choose to do that. And there are some videos and informational pieces as well on that website. And then we have some service animal videos about the rights and responsibilities of service animal users. And that's a topic we get lots and lots of calls about: service animals, emotional support animals, and assistance animals in housing and so forth. It's a big topic.
Interesting. Yeah, I imagine you all are a natural outlet for people outside the disability community to seek out answers for some of those kinds of things.
Yes.
We have several questions and a comment, so I want to tackle them really quickly. Claudia, this is your contact info. Is that what people would use if they wanted to talk further about setting up a presentation and whether that's possible?
Sure. Yes, you can
Okay,
contact
great.
us. Yes.
And we have another question that says, or a comment that the legislative education project was very helpful, and the plain English videos as well. And a big thank you for those. This is an interesting question to me, and they're wanting to know about, both the Governor's Council is one of a handful of organizations that operate at a state level in Missouri. And when someone is newly working within the state, either legislatively or as a state employee in another context, how do they find out about what the state offers for people with disabilities? Are you all part of any of the orientation for new legislators, new employees, or how do people reach out to you for expertise?
So again, for state employees, there is a lot of onboarding information that is provided when people join the state workforce. And part of that is disability awareness training that they can receive. And I think that mentions our agency as a contact as well. The disability portal is housed on the State of Missouri website. So that's how they can find out about us and about the Governor's Council on Disability. And then we collaborate with several other organizations and councils throughout the state on disability related issues.
What kind of oversight is built in for your agencies? Is there somebody that helps you establish your annual goals, that looks at metrics to see how things are going? It's kind of a complicated question, but I think that's what they're going for.
So all the councils that are in existence can be found on that boards.mo.gov page. They're all listed there. So that would be another place where people could find out what kind of boards and commissions exist in the state of Missouri. As far as the work that we do, we are overseen, as I mentioned earlier, by a council that is appointed by the governor. And then we provide an annual report to the governor's office and the General Assembly at the end of each year to report on our activities throughout the year. So that is something that probably all of the other boards and councils have to do as well. I would imagine we have a strategic plan that we renew every so often. We just renewed that last year, and that's also housed on our website.
Here's an easier one. Somebody said they can't quite tell how to sign up for your newsletter on the website. Is there an easy answer?
Yes, there is a very easy answer. So if you go to disability.mo.gov, there's a box that says what's new, and it says read the latest issue of the GCD newsletter. So you click on that, and that brings you to our newsletter page, and there is a button that lets you subscribe, and then your email will be added to that email list.
That is all the questions that we had people ask. I did want to ask one more question, and that is just, you talked a couple times about collaborations. Are there organizations that you tend to regularly collaborate with, whether it's some of those other state level groups or universities or nonprofits? I'm curious as to how that plays out. I know I'm involved in many collaborations.
All of the above. Yeah, just to give you an example, our Missouri Youth Leadership Forum we host that, but we don't host that alone. Like I mentioned, we're 4 people in our staff, and so we need others to help us facilitate a big program like that. So we collaborate with vocational rehabilitation, which of course is another state agency under Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and MU, Pre-Employment Transition Services, which is part of the university, and Paraquad, which is a nonprofit local organization in St. Louis, and MOSIL, which is the Missouri Centers for Independent Living. And they are all represented on our planning team and help us put on that conference. So that's just one example of how we collaborate with others to get things done.
We've got another question, which I feel like I should know the answer to, but I really don't. So it's asking if the Governor's Council, if that type of entity exists in all other states.
Yes, there's actually a National Association of Governors Committees. And I'm a part of that. So that's a national organization of Governors Council. It doesn't exist in every state of this United States, but in many of them. And where they're housed is very different. Some are under different entities, some are directly under the governor's office, some are under different parts of the government, but we have actually met a couple of times in person, or we have regular meetings quarterly or bi-monthly, and discuss different topics that are relevant to all of us and learn from each other, and sometimes, brag and steal. Some things that other councils are doing, we've replicated in our state. And vice versa.
Claudia, I just want to thank you. You've been very generous with your time today. It's obvious from your presentation that the Governor's Council has many, many things going on. So thanks so much for spending time with us today. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.